The first question I want you to ask yourself is this: is the being of anything located within the edges we impose? I want you to take a moment to look at this picture. Normally, as we move through the world, we see many separate things. We filter the world through our thoughts, and because our thoughts are structured in language, we end up moving through a world of named things, all separate from each other. So, when moving through this forest, we encounter it pre-sliced, as it were, already divided into named things: a rotting log, shadows here and there, fallen leaves, branches, and so on. We may not be saying these words out loud, but this is how we encounter this environment, pre-sliced. We are all educated and enlightened types, so we are all aware that this is an ecosystem, that it's all interconnected and so on. But we see it as an intricate network of interconnected, distinct elements. We still divide the scene up into its constituent parts. We have spoken already of Whitehead's fallacy of misplaced concreteness. If you remember, it basically says this: any entity that we locate within edges at a point in space-time is an illusion. Since everything is really an event, and events extend radically outward in the world, both spatially and temporally, it's a fallacy to ascribe concrete existence to anything at a specific point in space or time. If we look at the rotting log in this forest, it's easy to see. The rotting log is a large-scale event involving humidity, shade, shelter from wind, insects, soil biology, rain, and countless other events that all extend far beyond the spatial edges we impose on it. To say, "that's a log," while pointing at a certain XYZ location in Cartesian space, is a linguistic and social convenience. It establishes the shared concept of rotting log and allows us to communicate about it. But it's completely false to point your finger at this rotting log and say that it is actually there. And the same goes for each thing you think is here in the scene. Every patch of shade, every branch, every pine cone, every fallen leaf. None of these things exist within their edges. What I want you to think about is this: when you point to yourself and say, "this is me," you fall into the same trap as we do when we point at the rotting log and say, "that's a rotting log." You commit the fallacy of misplaced concreteness. Ontologically, you've been doing exactly this all your life with your own being. You have located your being at a point in space, within the edges of your body. You have attached a symbol to it, me, and you have come to believe that this is who you are. You've been told that this is who you are all your life, but this does not make it true. It's very convenient for parents, teachers, corporations, priests, and tax collectors to have you located at a point in space, so that they can take hold of you and move you this way and that, like a chess piece. This is why you've been raised to believe that yourself is positional and substantial, but this concreteness is misplaced. In the same way that it is a fallacy to point at a rotting log and say, "that's a rotting log," it's a fallacy to point at the point in space where you are located and say, "that is where my being is located." Your conviction that your being is located within the edges of your body, that your being is separated from world, is another one of these mental structures that Zen says you are imposing upon the world, that are not really there. It's not so hard to see that the rotting log extends far beyond the edges we artificially impose on it. The fallacy of misplaced concreteness is clear. So why is it so hard to extend this logic to ourselves? Why are we so utterly convinced that our being is located within our Cartesian edges? Here's the answer. When you see how this log really extends far out beyond its so-called edges, it's because I've encouraged you to temporarily relax the Cartesian framework that your OS normally imposes upon the world. You stop inserting the empty space that your OS normally inserts between the log and everything else. This allows you to see what's actually going on in the world, instead of the Cartesian assembly of logs, leaves, sunlight, and dirt, all separate from each other, that your OS normally presents you with. But this is not how you currently see yourself. Just as the edges of a log define what it is in Cartesian space, you believe that your Cartesian edges mark out what, where, and who you are. You allow these edges to define your being. And as long as you continue to elevate these Cartesian edges to this ontological level, you will continue to conceive of your own being as a substantial thing existing at a specific location in Cartesian space.